interest of time. By way of introduction, my name is Angela Ambers Henderson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Director of Admissions at the University of Houston Law Center. I'm also joined by my colleague, Dean Pilar-Mensah, who will be answering your questions. My role today is to be facilitating this discussion. So when I'm done speaking, I'm actually going to turn off my camera so that I don't confuse you guys in terms of who is representing the University of Houston Law Center. Again, thank you for joining us. A little bit about the program and how we will proceed today. You have all been automatically muted. The chat box will not be working for this particular session. If you'd like to make sure your full name is displayed, that would be awesome, and you can make that change. This session is being recorded and will be emailed to you at the end of this presentation, should you need to refer back to it. So we're gonna go ahead and kind of get started. And so I'm gonna let my colleagues introduce themselves. If you don't mind, starting Dean Mensah, you will share where you're from, how long you've been at the University of Houston Law Center, and what the median LSAT and median GPA is for your institution.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Pilar-Mensah. As Angela said, I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at the University of Houston Law Center. I've been here 11 years, but I am originally from Phoenix, Arizona. And our median LSAT last year was a 161, and our median GPA was a 3.64.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Danielle Saavedra. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Texas Tech University School of Law in Lubbock, Texas. I have been here now for about 7 years. I'm originally from El Paso. Our LSAT median for this last class was a 157, and the GPA was a 3.56.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Cassiano. I'm the Assistant Dean for Admissions at St. Mary's School of Law in San Antonio. I've been here in the admissions office about 8 years, and our median LSAT for our class is a 153, and our median GPA is a 3.2.
I did it too. Good morning. My name is Alicia Kramer. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I will be celebrating my 31st anniversary at the law school later on this month. Yes, I started as a baby. Our median was a 154 and a 3.3.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Branson. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Baylor Law School in Waco, Texas. I've been here for a little over 9 years. I'm from Dallas originally. Our median LSAT for this past year was a 162, and our median GPA was a 364.
My name is Heather Stovall. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at SMU Law. I've been here almost 4 years. Our medians for last year were a 163 and a 3.76.
Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Ridgely. I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions here at Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University. Unlike my colleagues, I've only been here about a good week, so I'm still fresh, but I work with law school admissions for about 10 years. Our median here at Tech TSU for the LSAT is a 151, and our median GPA is a 3.32 for the last class. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Terrence Cook. I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Scholarships at Texas A&M University School of Law in Fort Worth, Texas. I've been in this position for about 9 years, and overall admissions related experience, about 20 years. And our median LSAT for last year's entering class was a 163, the median GPA 3.84.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Matthew Lay. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at the University of Texas School of Law, also referred to as Texas Law. We're located in Austin, Texas. And I've been in this position for just about 4 years as well. And overall, however, been in admissions for quite some time. This past year's entering class, the incoming cohort had a 169 as their median LSAT and a 3.8 for their median GPA. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for those introductions. And now, folks, that we've learned a little bit about our panelists, we would like to learn a little bit about those of you who have registered and who are interested in attending law school. So we have a couple polls for you. We can launch the first poll, please. Almost evenly split so far. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'll say we have 92 out of 100. Oh, 94, 95.
Wow, we appreciate that. Wow, 95% participate. I love this group.
So I'm gonna go ahead. Well,
Oh,
still
very
getting
good.
answers.
Are we gonna get 100% participation? Let's do it. Come on, we can do it. Awesome.
Almost.
Interesting. Okay, the future, the past. Huh. Great. Well, thank you for that. Very, very good. Alrighty, and we have one other question. That's a little bit more, I guess, appropriate to today's session. We can launch the second poll. Got a few more answers coming in there, but okay.
I ended it.
Awesome, thank you. Alrighty. Thank you very much for participating in those polls. We'd like to have a little bit of idea in terms of the audience that we're speaking to so that we can make sure we are answering questions for the masses, if you will. I want to go to my next series of fast, fun facts, if you will, starting with Dean Mensa. And can you answer the question in terms of whether or not there's a full-time program, part-time program, and if you have a spring and or fall start?
Yes. So we do have both a full-time day program and then a part-time evening program. The full-time day is 3 years, part-time evening is 4 years. And we only have a fall start for entering first-year students.
Thank you.
We similarly only have a fall start for entering students and currently only offer a daytime, full-time, 3-year traditional JD program.
St. Mary's, we have a full-time program, and then starting this fall, we will have a fully online part-time program, which will be a 4-year program. We only do fall start. We don't have any spring start.
At South Texas, we have a fall and a spring start. Fall is for our full-time and our part-time program. Spring is for the full-time cohort only. And beginning in fall of 22, the part-time cohort will have the option of attending fully in person or what we're calling our flexible schedule, meaning you'd be in class 2 nights a week and off campus virtual the other 2.
At Baylor, we only have full-time during the day program. We have 3 start times. We have a spring, a summer, and a fall start quarter.
At SMU, we only have a full-time program and we only start a new class in the fall.
We're the same at TSU. We have a full-time traditional JD program that starts in the fall.
Texas A&M has a full-time program that starts in the fall semester.
Same here on Texas Law.
Awesome. Alrighty. Round 3, I guess, of our fast facts questions. And this relates to application deadlines. So I'll be asking our panelists to share what their application deadline is. If there's an early application, what that deadline might be. If there's an early decision, is it binding or not binding? Dean Mensa.
Yes, great questions. Okay, so yes, we do have an early decision deadline of November 15th, and that is for both our full-time and part-time program. It is non-binding. Then we have a regular decision deadline for our full-time, which is March 15th, and a regular decision deadline for our part-time, which is May 15th. So 3 different deadlines for us.
At Texas Tech, we do not have an early decision deadline. Our priority regular decision deadline is March 1, but our application will remain open until May 1.
At St. Mary's, our early decision is mid-November and it is not binding. And our regular decision is deadline is March 1st.
Yes, I know how to unmute. Give me a sec. We have both fall and spring, as I mentioned. So the deadlines for fall, the priority deadline is February 10th. The regular deadline is March 24th, and the final deadline is May 9th. And that's for both the full-time and the part-time cohort. And then in the spring, priority is October 8th, and final is December 1.
Okay, so we have 3 entering classes, so our deadlines are a little complicated. So our for spring, our priority deadline is mid-November. Final deadline is January 1st. For summer, our priority deadline is March 15th, regular deadline May 1st. And for fall, we do have early non-binding decision with a deadline of November 15th. And then our priority deadline for fall is March 15th, but we leave our applications open until July 1st.
We do not have an early decision deadline program, and our regular decision deadline is March 1st.
Our application opens up September 1st. We do not have an early decision, but we do have a priority consideration deadline, which is April 1st. And then our regular application is open all the way up until August 1st.
Texas A&M will open their application up as well, September 1. You will see several priority deadlines beginning in November. We will have one in February. We will have a third one in March, and we will close out that application at the end of May.
Here at Texas Law, our application opens up on September 1st. We do have an early decision binding program. The deadline is November 1st, and then our regular decision deadline is March 1st.
Great, thank you so much. Alrighty, next round. This relates to the application, whether or not you have an application fee. If there's an application fee, how much is it? Are fee waivers available? And what's my process for obtaining a fee waiver?
Well, mine is very easy. We do not have an application fee, so none of the other questions are relevant.
Okay.
At Texas Tech, we similarly do not have an application fee.
St. Mary's, no application fee.
We do have an application fee. However, if you apply by either of the priority deadlines, it is automatically waived. And I'm not going to lie, we have a generous fee waiver policy, so just email us. I might as well just get rid of it.
We do not have an application fee.
No application fee either.
We're the same as South Texas. We do have an application fee. It is about $55, but we do have a generous fee waiver policy. You could just email our general admissions inquiry box and we'll grant you a fee waiver.
You will see an application fee listed for Texas A&M, $65 domestic students, $90 international students. However, we typically waive that fee across the board automatically.
Here at Texas Law, we do have an application fee of $70. And for students to apply for a fee waiver, you can apply on our website. There are 4 categories for a fee waiver: merit-based, need-based, if you've worked in public service, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, Teach for America, military, And then, yeah, and so again, just apply on our website.
Great, thank you. All righty, next round of questions. This relates to tuition and scholarship. Specifically, what is your tuition for 1 year? Are there scholarships available for 1L students? And how might I obtain a scholarship?
Yes, so tuition and fees, there is a scholarship available. It's called the Dean Scholarship. It is merit-based. So when you apply to the program and are admitted, you'll be automatically considered for this merit-based scholarship as well. And we will be looking at your undergraduate cumulative GPA as well as your LSAT score. The scholarship is good for the time that you're here. So if you're in full-time, it's renewable for 3 years. Part-time, it's renewable for 4 years. We just ask that you remain in good standing with the institution, which is approximately a 2.33 GPA.
Our tuition and fees comes out to just under $28,000 a year at Texas Tech. We do offer scholarships all the way from $1,000 to full tuition scholarship. The students do not need to do anything extra. The application is what is looked at to award those scholarships, and they are merit-based.
At St. Mary's, our full-time tuition is roughly $40,000 per year, and we do merit-based scholarships based on LSAT and GPA. For our part-time program, it's about $26,000 per year, and we do similar in terms of scholarship based on your application.
So the full-time tuition is a little over 36,000 for a full-time student, and a little over 24,000 for a part-time student. And as like my colleagues are indicating, scholarships are automatically offered depending once you've been admitted, generally based on your LSAT and undergraduate GPA. You do have to maintain a 3.1 after the conclusion of your first year to renew the scholarship, and again after the end of your second year.
So our tuition is $61,782 for a year. About 90% of our students do have scholarships. Like my colleagues, you're eligible for almost all of them just by submitting your application. LSAT and GPA get you in a general range, and then other merit factors can raise your scholarship. We do have a few scholarships that require a separate application. If you went to Abilene Christian or Texas A&M, we have special scholarships for those folks. And if you did any sort of undergraduate advocacy, we have a separate scholarship, and you do have to maintain a 275 after your first year.
Our tuition is right around 53,000, and very similar to many of my other colleagues, all of our admitted students are automatically considered for what's called our Dean Scholarship. More than 90% of our incoming class typically receive one of those scholarships.
At Texas Southern, our resident tuition is about $21,000, and our non-resident tuition is about $28,000 per year. We do offer merit-based scholarships. There's nothing else you have to do. Everyone is considerate, but we do have a priority deadline by April 1st. So if you want to be considered for a scholarship, apply before April 1st. And they're also renewable. Thank you.
Tuition at Texas A&M is just over $33,000. We are similar in the sense that there's no separate application required to be considered for those scholarships. They are merit-based. They can range from $1,000 up to full tuition and tuition-generated fees. Renewable upon remaining in good academic standing. That's a 2.33 at Texas A&M. And so basically when I say good standing, you haven't failed out of law school, essentially. And I'll also add that there is a conduct component to it. So you can't go out on a murdering spree and expect to have a scholarship renewed in subsequent years either.
You can't?
No, that's a bad thing. Might not get licensed by the state.
Here at Texas Law, our tuition is roughly over 36,000 for in-state students, and then non-resident tuition is roughly 54,000. The vast majority, if not all, of the non-resident students do receive something that's called an NRTE, which is a non-resident tuition waiver, which brings their tuition down to the in-state rate. You do actually have to submit an application for scholarships. So upon admission, you'll receive a link to the scholarship application where the scholarship committee needs a little bit more information than just the LSAT and the GPA to understand certain particularities in the student's background to make a decision. They are merit and need based, and roughly 82% of the incoming cohort does receive some kind of scholarship and grant support.
Awesome, thank you. Alrighty, we're going to switch gears a little bit and start talking about the specific parts of the application. And so in order to help facilitate that discussion, I'm going to assign specific parts of the application to my colleagues. And so we'll start with the personal statement. And I'll be asking representatives from the University of Houston Law Center, Texas Tech, and St. Mary's to address the personal statement. I will then go to my colleague from South Texas, Baylor, and SMU to talk about letters of recommendation. They'll be followed by my colleagues from TSU, Texas A&M, and Texas Law to discuss the resume. Then I'll end the application sort of question area with having each of you speak about addendums that you either require, expect, any guidelines for that, okay? Dean Mensa, if you can start with any feedback on personal statements.
Sure. Well, there's a lot that can be said about the personal statement. So please feel to try and chime in anyone else. But I would say, everyone is going to submit obviously their transcripts and their LSAT score. And I think my colleagues would agree that it is an important component of the application, but it's not decisive. And that personal statement can really make a big difference one direction or the other. The personal statement is the only opportunity that we have to hear directly from you in terms of what your interests are, what you're passionate about, why it is you want to go to law school, why you may be interested in our particular university. So it's really important that it's well written. There aren't grammatical mistakes, spelling mistakes, that you answer any prompts that you may find in the application. Some schools are very specific about what they're looking for in the personal statement, or they may have a question that they want you to answer. So make sure you follow that. If there's any guidelines regarding the number of pages, the size of the font, the margins, all of those types of things you really want to pay attention to. And so that means you may not be able to write just one personal statement for multiple schools. You may have to create different versions to follow these guidelines, and stay within the parameters that they're looking for. But like I said, it should really be something that shares with us who you are and why right now in your life law school makes sense. And so it can be a very open-ended type of question because you can answer that in many different ways. But I think what shines through the most when I'm reading personal statements, and the ones that stick with me that I think are really good, are the ones that are very genuine. So we're not looking for, we want a diverse class. So we're not looking for any one thing in particular. So whoever you are, that's what should shine through when you're talking about your personal statement. Okay, I'll stop now and let somebody else get a turn.
Dean Mensa, you covered it all. I would
Maybe we can talk about don'ts too, like things that stick out in a bad way.
Yes, definitely. For one, don't be so hard on yourself. We get a lot of questions of what should I write for my personal statement? And the thing to remember is every person reading your personal statement has their own thoughts, preferences, biases, whatever the case may be. So there is no perfect personal statement. There is no model answer for you to look at and write from. As Dean Mensa said, we want to hear and read your authentic voice. With that, please feel free to refrain. Do not use legalese and pull out a thesaurus to try to make your personal statement sound smarter or more lawyerly. Most lawyers don't even talk like that. We want to read something that sounds like you. Definitely getting it proofread, being careful to, if you do tailor your essay to each different school, ensuring that those tailored essays arrive correct to the correct school. So if you're writing an essay to school X, make sure it goes to school X and not school Y. Do not plagiarize. Shouldn't have to say that, but we have had scenarios. So I think those are a few of my biggest don'ts.
I don't know if I have any other don'ts too. I would definitely, I definitely think if you don't have anybody that you trust to read it, I know we get some people say, I don't have anybody that I know that can really trust, that I can trust to give me good feedback. If nothing else, read it back to yourself. Stand in front of a mirror even. I read some of the personal statements and I think, I don't even know if this person went back. I feel like sometimes we're all guilty of that, right? You jot something down on paper and then you're said, oh my goodness, I should have gone back to at least reread it. So if nothing else, please reread it yourself. It is very surprising how many we get with so many errors and things like that. But I would definitely agree with my colleagues in saying that just your genuine story and your voice are the most important things. And that's what really comes through, and maybe not just a mishmash of, and then I did this, and then I did this, but really making it more of a cohesive story, perhaps with a theme about why you want to go to law school. There typically tends to be some underlying theme that maybe it is your idea of service, or at the end of the day, what you think you want in terms of law school, what you want to get out of it. So just kind of revolving around that does tend to make it feel a little bit more organized and easier to read.
Thank you for sharing that. Before we go to the next area, letters of recommendation, would any other panelists like to speak on the personal statement? Did we leave anything out? No? Okay. All righty, then I'll start with my colleague from South Texas to lead us in the letters of recommendation discussion.
So as my colleagues have told you about the personal statement, follow the instructions. Some of us require letters, some of us do not, some of us recommend. Some of us will say you need one from specific people or parties. So, be thoughtful about what the instructions are. It's a detail thing. If you are offered an opportunity to do letters of recommendation, I strongly encourage you to do it. Why not, right? It's another chance to tell us about yourself. You specifically perhaps won't be telling us about yourself, but your letters will. I guess some thoughts about that. I think you should be strategic in thinking about your application to law school. Your personal statement, as my colleagues have talked about, you want to speak about yourself. And share all your qualities. And so perhaps your letters of recommendation can be people who can help enhance what you're talking about in your personal statement, or you might have other people in your life that would be good recommenders that might shine something different on your application and provide maybe a different aspect. So, think thoroughly and thoughtfully about who you're asking and make sure that they're going to add value. I don't think many of us really get bad letters of rec. They're less common, but you get kind of plain little vanilla ones that aren't really helpful. And the other thing that I would recommend and always like to tell people is sit down with your recommenders, have a conversation. This is why I'm asking you to write the letter. This is what I hoped maybe to achieve by asking you, or what I'd like you to be able to comment on. Here's my resume. Let's kind of talk about why I want to go to law school and have a conversation. I think that helps the person you're asking to be more thoughtful and strategic for you when they're putting it together.
I completely agree with what my colleague has said. To add a few things to that, we really don't care about the qualifications of your recommender. We don't care if your recommender is the head of the department or a congressman or a judge. Those things are fine, but we care way more about what that person is going to say about you. We see all the time kind of form letters from a congressman or congresswoman. That's kind of the most common thing that we see, and we can tell very quickly they're form letters. So don't worry so much about the prestige of your recommender, and really think about who knows you and who's going to be able to say things about you and the traits that you'll bring to law school. I would recommend that you tell your recommenders that you're applying to multiple places. We often get letters that reference a specific school, and as Dean Kramer was saying, it's not it's not a bad thing. It's not going to really be detrimental to you, but it doesn't look good when we get a letter that's clearly meant for another school. Then the last little tip I would give is make sure you give your recommenders plenty of time, particularly if you're getting a recommendation from a professor. Professors are busy and they take a long time to write letters, and you don't want that being the reason that your application is held up. So those are just 3 quick little tips. So Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
And you actually spoke about what I was going to say about not getting stuck on title. So I'll just add like just a little bit more to that. I think don't get caught up too on if you are asking a professor whether you're required or not. Again, follow the directions. Don't get stuck on having to have a professor that you think has some sort of political science class or some sort of pre-law or government class that you believe is related to law school. You know, that may have been an easy class for you when you got an A, but our admissions committees can see that you did well in that class from your transcript. So if that professor can't speak to who you are and how you study and how you may have overcome something that was difficult in the class, then we're not, again, stuck on who that person is or what that person teaches. Instead, maybe you got a C+ or a B- or a B in some class that is not your strong point, but you went to that professor and you talked to that professor, you went to office hours, you met with the professor's TA, and that professor can really speak to how you worked hard to, you know, improve throughout the semester. Those are the letters that stand out because they're going to show us who you are as an individual. And I know that this part might also seem a little common sense, but as my colleagues have mentioned, and again, as I was just talking about, make sure that you're really asking those people who can speak to who you are, but not your mom, not your dad, not your significant other, not your neighbor who's known you forever, even if they're a lawyer. If you haven't worked for that lawyer, we're not looking for those letters either. So you're wanting to really ask those that are in some sort of either teaching role, professional role, if you've volunteered, your supervisors there. So I think that was pretty much all I had to add.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. All righty. We'll go to the next area, the resume. Thurgood Marshall, will you start that discussion, please?
Absolutely, thank you. I think sometimes students kind of put the resume to the side sometimes, but I think it's a really important component to your application. This is a chronological timeline of your career, your volunteer experience, your education, your activities, awards, achievements, and presentations. In some ways, you can kind of think of your resume backing your application. So if the timeline on your resume doesn't match up with your application, it doesn't really look right. You know, your letters of recommendation can also kind of like coincide with your resume. If you worked with someone before, where was that on your resume and where is it placed? And a second thing, your personal statement, if you spoke about a volunteer experience that impacted your life and reasoning why you want to go to law school, then this will also be reflected on your resume. So all these factors should be backing up your application. In addition, the resume should all be neatly written and not too long. You know, most of you guys, our average age is about 26. So I'm not expecting you to have a 5-page resume, but making sure that it's concise and the order and structure of your resume is pleasant and easy to read. This is something that's over and it's a backup of your application and what you have to offer and how you make yourself stand out. So those are just a couple of tips for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Texas A&M, want to add to that?
Probably not a whole lot. That was a pretty thorough discussion, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything said. So can't overemphasize putting time into the resume. That was the first thing that resonated with me was don't put it to the side. Give it its due course and amount of time to perfect it. That begins with proofreading. You've got to copy edit your resume because that's going to say a whole lot to an admissions committee if you have not taken the time to get that right. And that's going to apply to every single component of your application, by the way. And so I view the resume as telling us a little bit about what kind of person you are. And it places some context within your academic studies and performance. Certainly, if you're a traditional student that doesn't have an extensive background or work experience, and you're not a second career person, so to speak. So that context is going to be important to me because I'm looking at what are you doing if you're not studying? What are you doing if you're not studying and or working significant hours? How do you spend your time? How are you developing perhaps what we call some of those soft skills? And how are those things demonstrated throughout your resume, either through your volunteerism or extracurricular activities? So think about things like leadership, perseverance, work ethic. Those are some of the character traits that we look for in law students, that we look for in practicing attorneys, and perhaps every single profession out there. And so a good way to illustrate your development of those skills is through the items that you're placing on your resume and discussing with us your significant contributions to whatever area you choose to place in your resume. And so the other thing that I will say before passing it on to Texas law is don't get so much caught up in what it is that you're doing in regards to perhaps extracurricular activities. It's a great thing if you have some experience with some type of legal agency or legal entity, to the degree that you are comfortable in making your decision to come to law school and to study law and perhaps ultimately go on to practice. But it's not a requirement. So there's no laundry list of extracurricular activities that one should be engaging in that's going to be the magic key to getting into someone's law school. I'm looking for, quite frankly, I'm looking for longevity. I'd rather have an applicant be a member of 1, 2, 3 organizations over an extended period of time, either being in a leadership position or being a very active member, versus the person that paid their dues to 35 different organizations and you're listing them all in your resume and you truly weren't dedicated to any of them because you were too involved in all of them.
Thank you. Texas law?
All wonderful advice, and I'll just underscore a couple of things, one of which is to make the distinction between a resume that you're applying for a job and a resume that you're applying to law school. I think many applicants who are still in college probably are familiar with hearing that, keep your resume to a page, keep your resume to a page. And that might very well work for a job that you're applying for. But, know, again, as we've articulated already, that a resume is much more robust than just the professional experiences. We're really looking at the holistic picture here, the full 10,000-foot picture. So it's not just the professional experiences, it's the leadership opportunities that you've engaged in, the community work that you've also participated in, all of those things that sometimes may not fit on one page. Now, if the law school requires it to be one page, keep it to one page. But if the school does give you the freedom to elaborate a little bit more, I would certainly do so. The other thing that I'll just underscore is the fact that make it easy for us to read and make it in a very logical sense. I think there are so many creative formats that are out there now, like with pictures and different kinds of blocks and stuff. I'm not going to suggest our average age as admissions deans, but I would say that many of us wear corrective lenses, and it takes us some time to get through some of the, exactly, to the font. And so make it very easy for us and to follow. So, the standard timeline, the most recent opportunities at the front, and then kind of work your way backwards. That's my preference. But if you ever are in doubt, ask any of the respective schools for their preferences as well. So make it easy for us is the only thing I would underscore. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All righty. I want to turn our attention just a little bit away from the application. And I have a couple very specific, somewhat unique type of questions. And I will be asking a couple of my colleagues in particular to address the question. So for those of you with a part-time program, the question is, if a student enrolls the first semester as a part-time student, would it be okay to switch to full-time on the second semester? Or will she have to wait until the next year to change it?
So for the University of Houston, we do ask for you to remain in the program you started with for the entirety of the first year. So if you start in the part-time program, the first year is going to consist of fall, spring, and summer semesters. After that, you do have the ability to switch to full-time. And that's true for both directions. So a person that may want to switch full-time to part-time, we're going to ask that same thing, is that you stay within your cohort for the first year. And then after that, you have the ability to switch.
For St. Mary's, it's the same. Our part-time program is 30 credits. So until you fulfill those 30 credits in the part-time program, you can't switch into the full-time program. And at this point, we can't allow anybody from full-time to switch to part-time.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else with a part-time program? I'm trying to keep it all straight. I guess not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And ours is similar to University of Houston. You can change, but you need to do it after you fulfill the 30-hour requirement.
Okay, all righty, thank you. I have another question. I am going to direct this specifically to my colleague from Texas A&M. And if anybody else wants to jump in on it, I guess that would be okay as well. And the question is, how would you respond to the claim that law school isn't worth it if you don't attend a top 14 institution?
Obviously, I'm not a top 14 institution, and we have a lot of students that think it's worth it. I say that you have to give credence to your own unique goals in regards to why you want to attend law school. What are going to be the outcomes? What type of career will you choose to seek after you've attended law school? I'm one of those people that's a firm believer in finding the right fit, irrespective of what rankings are saying or what your best friend may be saying, what your parents are whispering in your ear, what your peers may be doing. What's going to be best for you? And so there's a lot of soul searching that goes on, not only in terms of making a decision to attend law school and ultimately a career in the practice of law, or at least a career that you can benefit from having that legal education, but there's also that same amount of intensity and soul searching that goes into making a decision as to where you want to go to law school. And that is only something that you can answer for yourself. And that requires a lot of self-evaluation. It requires a lot of study in regards to the particular law schools that you may be interested in attending, and trying to figure out what's going to be the best environment for you, where you're going to be the most successful in terms of engaging in your legal studies. That's going to be first and foremost the most important thing to me for applicants to consider. And then you're going to have some other things that come into play. Financing your legal education might be influential in terms of your ultimate decision, things of that nature, but you're going to be fine. There are a lot of wonderful law schools out there. They are all capable of educating you at a level that's going to allow you to be successful in terms of practicing law, or else they would not be ABA accredited, quite frankly. And so not buying into the myth that you have to be at a top tier law school if it doesn't make sense for you, either personally, either financially, or geographically in terms of where you may want to practice ultimately. These are all things that you're going to have to take into consideration in terms of weighing that out. And a simple exercise, for instance, like writing down the pros and cons of your undergraduate institution, for instance. What are the things you loved about your undergraduate educational experience that you would like to see in law schools? That's a good place to start. I want a law school that is X, Y, and Z, because that's where I succeed. That's where I'm at my best. Then what are some of the considerations? What are some of the experience perhaps during your undergraduate education that you would never want to replicate in your law school experience? Write those down as well. And you have to give it some serious thought. Don't talk about parking, for instance. It's parking. Everyone has a bad parking experience, and it's going to be worse at some institutions than others. But give some serious thought to things that you think may inhibit your success in law school and ultimately your career options, and just weigh that out. But have some serious conversations about that with those that you care about, but internally first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you. Great response, actually. Very great response. I have a next question. I'm going to turn this to Texas Tech. If a student is taking a gap year What is something they can do to help them stand out during the application process?
I would encourage you to do something that you enjoy, whether that's going and doing a legal internship to ensure that law is something that you actually do enjoy. Honestly, if you want to travel, there is, again, no specific mold of a gap year that we are looking for. We've had students take gap year to care for their family, students that take gap year to work, to travel, that just need a little bit of a mental health break. All of those are totally valid, acceptable, normal reasons to take a gap year. But if you're looking to really maximize it, definitely getting involved with your community, again, kind of working towards increasing those soft skills that were previously mentioned by my colleagues. So anything that you can do with leadership, public service, community-oriented action, those are things that would definitely get the attention of the admissions committee when looking at what you've done in the time in between.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that response. I'm going to switch back to a little bit of fast facts because we want to make sure we get to all the core questions, if you will. And so starting with Dean Mensah, my question to you, does the University of Houston Law Center accept the GRE, the LSAT? Do you offer an interview? Is it required? Is it allowed?
Okay, so we do accept both the LSAT and the GRE, but I will give the caveat that if you take the LSAT, that is what we were going to consider. So someone who's in the position that's already taken the LSAT, it really does not make sense to then, in addition to that, take the GRE. I've even seen a student say, I'm studying for both. Please don't do that to yourself. Pick one. It's hard enough as it is. Pick one and focus your energy on that. And if you're not sure which test makes the most sense for you, possibly do a practice exam of each and see which one you think you're more comfortable with and you can improve the most on. And then what was the other part of the question?
Interview required or allowed?
No, we do not have an interview. It is not required and we really don't allow for that. If you have questions, we're happy to meet with you, but we don't do just evaluative interviews for the admissions process.
Thank you so much for that.
We only accept the LSAT at Texas Tech at this time. We do not have an interview process, but of course, every interaction you have with us in our office is a mini interview in and of itself. So please be polite and pleasant.
St. Mary's is LSAT only, and same as Texas Tech. We don't do interviews, but if you do come and visit or have a phone conversation with us, again, that's something that we're all observing.
So South Texas takes the GRE and the LSAT, and I wholeheartedly concur with my colleagues that while we don't do an interview, anything you do, say, or phone in or email is sort of an interview in and of itself. So be nice.
At Baylor Law, excuse me, we are LSAT only. We do offer interviews. They are optional to anybody applying in the cycle. They're 20 minutes. They are all over the country and virtual as well. And all that information is on our website.
We do also accept the LSAT or the GRE along with the LSAT, apologize. And then we actually have an optional interview process this year that is our first time to do that. So if you're not applying for fall of this year, then make sure to check back with us next year on if we're still doing that. But it is all video recorded. I think there are 5 questions that are timed down to a minute. And again, it is optional, but if you are applying for fall of this year, I would encourage you to go ahead and do those.
At Thurgood Marshall School of Law, we accept the LSAT only. We do not have any formal interviews, but if we have questions about your application, we may receive a call. That's rare though in those cases. And as all of the colleagues said, any interaction with us, you can consider, in any type of interview. So please be professional and be nice. Thank you.
Texas A&M will accept the LSAT or GRE, and we do not have an official interview process.
Thank you. Just so everybody's aware, my colleague from the University of Texas had to just jump off for just a moment. He will be returning And when he does, I will pose that question to him to give him the opportunity to answer it as well. Okay. Alrighty, I have a specific question. Let's go to SMU. This question was, what can an applicant do to give themselves the best chance possible to be accepted off of the wait list?
I would make sure to, and again, I think this is also a school specific question. So first I would speak to the admissions offices of any schools that you are on the wait list for. For us, we are looking for anything that you can do to better your application. So if there's time, depending on when you would be waitlisted during the application cycle, and you may not have studied super hard for the LSAT, you know that you can improve your LSAT score, then I know it's not fun, but retake the LSAT. If there are things that you're involved with, if you have a job change, if you win some sort of award, anything like that, you can continually update us on. I would caution though against don't email the schools every single day. I think that might not be great, as my colleagues were talking about how it's important on how you present yourself to the school. So keep that in mind as well, especially when it comes to the wait list portion.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add maybe a different perspective from their schools, or we are pretty much in alignment? No? Okay. Alrighty. Baylor, I have this question for you. How are and I think other schools may want to jump in, this may be different, but I'll start with you. How are S grades during COVID-19 on our transcript viewed? How about if I have 3 to 5 S grades?
S grades, I guess that's satisfactory maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think honestly, we are pretty used to seeing pass, fail, satisfactory, unsatisfactory for COVID. LSAT lets us know that you were in school during COVID, but we all realize that 2020 and 2021, specifically spring of 2020, for the majority of people, we're going to see pass, fail, or satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So I wouldn't worry about spring of 2020, early summer of 2020, and possibly even fall of 2020 if I can see your entire transcript is that. Now, the downside is that you're still going to have a cumulative GPA calculated, and so it's going to be calculated with fewer grades, and that's just how it is. They do those pass, fail, satisfactory grades still do have an impact on you, because it means that your GPA is with fewer grades. But as far as how we view COVID year, really, I don't think we're going to worry about that too much. Now, maybe now, if we're seeing a bunch of satisfactory, unsatisfactory, I'm probably going to start having questions, because I don't think there are a whole lot of schools anymore that are still doing that. If you think we're going to have questions about something, always feel free to do an addendum explaining that. But specifically for those 2020 semesters, I wouldn't worry about it at all. We are very used to seeing that and are fine with that.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that at all? All right, then I'm going to transition right back to the application to the addendum, right? So St. Mary's, explain to us, what is it? Why do people need one? And then others can jump in as well.
So an addendum essentially is an extra document that an applicant can submit that contains any information that we didn't necessarily specifically ask for, but that you feel is pertinent to your application in some way. So that could be explaining and something odd that happened during your LSAT test taking, perhaps an interrupted Wi-Fi connection, anything like that. It could be for a GPA where potentially you had a semester that you think you want us to explain that maybe you had transitioned to a different major, or you had a personal issue going on during that semester. And then there's the character and fitness addendum, which is generally required if you have anything that you have to answer yes to on either the academic questions or the actual character and fitness questions about whether you've been arrested or have anything in your past that you need to disclose to us. So those are the different types of addendums. And they generally are in just a pretty simple Word format that you would just attach with your application when you submit it through LSAC.
Thank you. And you just leads me right to my next question, character and fitness. I love it. What is that? Do I have to answer that question? Does it mean that you're not, guys are not going to accept me? South Texas, will you speak to that?
I'm happy to. So it's very important that you read the questions, the character and fitness questions very carefully. Each of our schools, we're not trying to trick you, but some of them are written differently. They will often reflect what the Board of Law examiners might be asking you at some point in the future, but be thoughtful about them. Most often, I think we would all feel that what you disclose is probably not going to keep you out of law school. We see a lot of things. You know, there are students with minors in possessions or, just whatever, but there's things, right? And so generally they are not the things that will keep you out of school. Not disclosing them and us finding them out later, which I promise you we will because of the Board of Law examiners process, that's when it becomes a problem, because then it's a character and fitness and a moral ethical dilemma with why you were not upfront and honest in the beginning of the process. So I guess my thought to you about that is call the school, ask someone. We are all very, very happy to engage and help you through it. Again, because you may be asking the wrong people, an upperclassman, your attorney, your mom, I don't know. Don't listen to them. Call an admissions professional and let us help you with the question. Again, it is not usually the answer itself that will get you in trouble. It's not doing it and us learning about it later. And another quick thing about that, I cannot tell you the number of times that students answer no to the question about I've been on academic probation. Get your transcripts and take a look at them. You may have had one semester that the school put you on probation and you might not have even been aware of it because you came off the very next semester, something like that. So look at your transcripts and just make sure that you don't have anything on there that you aren't aware of, especially if they're old, get those things out, dust them off, make sure that you don't need to answer yes, because that's very frustrating for us to have to go back and either ask you to fix it, or maybe some schools decide that that's enough of a reason to not admit you or turn you into LSAC. So just be very thoughtful and read and ask.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. At the University of Houston Law Center, I am responsible for the character and fitness area. And I would agree wholeheartedly, especially that academic probation. People sometimes don't even look at their transcript. You could not be more spot on with that. So I appreciate you sharing that. Would anybody else like to add anything relative to the area of character and fitness? Okay. Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit more. And now we have some questions for you, participants. So can we launch the next poll? Okay.
Very even.
Yeah. Wow.
Like,
All right.
exactly.
Thanks. All right. That's good information. All right. How about our next question?
All right.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Not that many folks participate in that one, but that's okay. All righty. Okay. All righty. So here's my next specific question, and I'm going to turn my attention to TSU, perhaps to address this one. And then again, if Anyone wants to add anything, please feel free to do so. What's the best advice for a first-generation applicant who feels terribly unprepared and disadvantaged?
That's a really good question. Applying to law school can be somewhat daunting. You're thinking about all the credentials you see online, what you need to do to prepare. And the first thing that I can say is, one, start reaching out to your pre-law advisor as soon as possible. Start learning about what's the criteria early. You need to prepare. You really need to talk with them to talk about your academic performance, what you need to do to continue on if you're still in school before applying to law school. In addition to that, you really need to research the LSAT. And this can be a big thing because most students who are disadvantaged are not great standardized test takers. And then see if also the schools that you are looking at are taking the GRE or the LSAT and which one test would be the best one for you. A big proponent of that is really just learning about what schools you go to, what schools you would like to either possibly practice law in when that time comes, what type of support each school offers you when it comes to bar exam and academics. You also want to really take a lot of time in preparing your application. You want to make sure that you read all the materials that are required and you start again very early. When you're looking to prepare for either the GRE or the LSAT, you kind of need to go ahead and just take one of those a timed practice test to see where you are as a diagnostic. And if you're scoring below the median, the national average, then you need a lot more time to prepare for it. When we're looking at the standardized test, the LSAT, it's not, I'm just going to be honest, it's not great to see 5 scores on there. When we're looking at 5 scores, that's why you want to prepare as much as you can the first or second time to take it. When you're taking it 5+ more times, we're looking at your scores and where you are. And a lot of times, some school may take the highest, some may even average them. But you're looking at the scores and where you fall. If you're falling below the average most of the times and you have that one outlier, we're thinking the other scores are more of an indication of how you're performing on the LSAT. So you need to be careful of that. Not to say that if you do have 5+ more scores, you won't get into law school, but you need to watch out. So preparing for the standardized test is going to be an uphill battle. And you want to make sure that you're taking as many time tests as possible to get your score. Because a lot of times when you're taking those time practice tests, when you take the real thing, you're scoring a little bit lower than what you did on those practice tests. So that's one thing. The rest of it, you really need to take your time in building those relationships for those letters of recommendation. I suggest you come hard the first time when you're applying and making sure that you have the right recommenders who understand that you're applying to law school and understand the competition that's at bay. And then lastly, the personal statement. We had great advice from my colleagues here, and you need to really kind of lay down, why you want to go to law school, what life events led you to this path, and write it almost, if you are a good storyteller, in that manner. But if not, stick to what you know, stick to who you are, and make sure that you're shining and selling yourself in your personal statement. And this is just a few tips, but I'll pass it on to anyone else who want to add anything else.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to add on to that?
I was just going to add on to kind of the other side of it. So once you are admitted into law school, I know that a lot of times, I think at all points in our life, someone has felt like the imposter syndrome, but knowing that you can do it. So if you've been admitted to a law school, it's because the law school read your application and your background and your credentials and thinks that you will be successful in their program. That's why you've admitted them. So law school is going to be challenging no matter what your background is, whether or not there's a lawyer in your family or not. If you're first generation, I think law school is very challenging for anyone, no matter what their background. And so my biggest advice once you do get to law school is to use the support and the resources that are there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to meet with your professors during office hours. If there's tutoring sessions, meet with your career counselor, meet with your academic advisor, like utilize the resources. I find that students that struggle the most use the resources the least. So just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid. There are no dumb questions. Everybody's here to help you. No matter what school you go to, there will be resources available to help you so you can be successful.
Great. Alrighty, thank you. I got a couple more questions and I'm gonna sort of assign these out right now so to give you some time to think about it a little bit for my panelists. So the first question is going for Baylor. How portable are degrees from Texas law schools across Texas throughout the United States? Think about that. Don't answer for a second, hold it, right? My next question is going to be for Texas A&M. How would you solidify the work-life balance? And my third question is going to be for St. Mary's, and it is, I'm a third-year student graduating early in December 2022. I never considered law school before until this semester, so I didn't have the opportunity to take any pre-law classes. Do you have any recommendations on how to prepare for law school without being in pre-law? Alrighty. Baylor, do you need me to read that question again? How portable are the degrees?
I think I have it. So within Texas, I'd say degrees are pretty portable within Texas. I mean, kind of all the firms and businesses here in Texas know of all the Texas law schools. Now there are some schools that obviously have the strongest presence in their own city, but that is not to mean that they're not portable to other Texas cities. Outside of Texas, our degrees are certainly more, I think, portable than they were maybe a few years ago. And the reason why is Texas is now a UBE state, which is the Uniform Bar Exam. And I was trying to count to see how many jurisdictions are now UBE states. It's something like 39, or it's a very high number. And what that is means that you take the same bar exam, and that bar exam can be transported around the country. Now, every state can set its own passage rate, and they can have a few more requirements, and you'll have to go through the character and fitness process in different states. But it means that, when you take the bar exam here, it is extremely portable around the country. That being said, you certainly need to be aware of geography when you're looking at law schools, because a lot of your networking and your internship and externship experiences are likely going to be regional. And so you're going to have really good connections in the region where your law school is. That's not to say that you can't go elsewhere. I think all of our schools have, grads all around the country and the world even.
Awesome, thank you. Next panelist.
I think that is me on work-life balance. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. The first thing that I want to talk about is time management. That's going to be incredibly important to you. It is now, in terms of how you're managing all the competing interests in your life, whatever those might be, whether they're academic, professional, personal. All of those things are incredibly important to you, and time management comes into play in terms of how you manage each of those things and how much attention you're paying to those competing interests. So that's going to be key. If you're not quite there in regards to your time management, you can always strengthen that. Most of us will spend our entire lives trying to get better at that. I will also talk about institutional resources in terms of the law schools that you are considering. What type of resources do they have available to you in regards to facilitating that work-life balance, in regards to helping you if you fall into some difficulties in terms of struggling with that component of things. Having discussions with those that are near and dear and close to you about the challenges associated with attending law school and how that might be different than what they previously experienced, particularly parents and siblings in regards to your undergraduate education experience, it's going to take you some time to adjust. And your focus might be a little bit more on the work aspect of things, on law school, in terms of making that adjustment, in terms of putting your best foot forward with regards to your academic performance. So talking to those that are near and dear to you, your close circle of friends, getting them to understand that maybe I have to check out a little bit so that I can get the hang of what's going on here, what's going to be required of me to be successful in this endeavor. And so the other thing that I will tell you about, and really I want to talk about, is making sure now is the right time to enter law school. If there are some issues you may be working through, some unresolved problems, either personally or with family members that are drawing your attention heavily, you don't have that clear frame of mind in terms of entering into law school, you may want to consider some type of deferring that start of your legal education until you can clear up some of those circumstances. I've had a lot of students come through where they just wanted to power through it, or they were afraid the opportunity wouldn't be there for them if they took a gap year to work through some personal matters so that they would be comfortable in terms of entering into legal education. And I've seen them struggle mightily in terms of trying to balance those things. And so that's going to be an important consideration as well. I've gotten in, it's wonderful. Is now the right time, or should I reconsider that? And I know I talked a little bit about the front end, and I talked about during law school. Perhaps one of my colleagues might want to talk about work life and the actual practice if that's relevant, but I'll stop.
Okay, we'll hold that one, and we're going to go to the other question from, I think it was St. Mary's that I asked to speak on that one about the third year student. Who did I ask to do that? I lost my train of thought.
Yes, that was me.
Right. I thought so. All righty, thank you.
So the question was about whether if you didn't do any pre-law, you're in trouble. And the answer is no. I mean, there's plenty of people who do pre-law because they're great. They're fantastic organizations, and you can get some good, information. But if you didn't do it, that's okay too. There's plenty of people who go to law school without ever having had the advantage of that pre-law organization. I think wherever you are, if you have the opportunity to perhaps participate by sitting in a class. So for example, if there's a law school near you, asking whether they are allowing the visitors at this point to go and observe a class could potentially be a good way just to see what law school is like. Or I know we have classes that from COVID that are online. So you can even go to YouTube and just find a class and say, okay, I just want to investigate what a law school class looks like before I get there day one and have no idea what I'm going to encounter. Similarly, you could always meet with either a law student or a practicing attorney and just say, hey, can I take you out for a coffee and just let me pick your brain and see what I should anticipate for law school. I met with a student today who's been talking with one of our recent grads and said, oh yeah, I already know sort of all this information about professors and kind of what to expect. And I thought that was great. It's like, if you don't, use those resources, then what are they there for? So just asking those questions and even reaching out to your admissions professionals like all of us to ask those questions as well. What to anticipate and what potentially you could do over the summer to prepare, whether it's reading, maybe there's a book list, suggested book list, something like that of things that you can at least start preparing for. And those can be I'm not talking about law books, because I know once we admit students, they're like, how quickly can I start reading my law books? And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the nice, maybe fun, fictional type books, or the ones that give you a little bit of insight into what an experience as a law student is like.
Thank you. I see my colleagues from University of Texas has joined us again, Matthew. So there was a couple questions that I raised that you were not here, and I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in on that. It was during our sort of fast facts round. And so it's whether or not you accept the GRE, the LSAT, and do you have an interview that you require or allow?
Yes, we do accept the GRE, and we do offer an interview. It's an invitation only. Not everyone gets invited who is admitted. Not everyone who is admitted gets invited. And so it really just depends on the admissions committee member on whether or not they are seeking a little bit more information from the candidate. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. During this portion of the program, Matthew, we're just trying to go through some of the questions that were previously submitted. So I'm going to give your colleagues a little bit of a break and put you on the spot a little bit. I'm going to shoot you 3 or 4 questions in a row. So you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, and if anybody has any thing to chime in, definitely please do so as well. So this question is, how much consideration does the admissions committee give to an applicant's undergraduate school? Can an applicant's undergraduate school lower their chances of getting accepted?
Not really. I would be shocked if there was any one of us who really knew all of the institutions across the country, right? Knew the particularities of them. While it is important, it's not something that I spend a lot of time on in the analysis. What I do when I see an institution that I'm not familiar with is, like all of us, we go to the CAS report. And LSAC has done all of the information and the research and data analysis, that is important for us when we're making that analysis. So when you submit your transcripts to LSAC, which you will be required to do regardless of whether you take the LSAT or the GRE, is they transcribe that transcript for us, for those of us who didn't attend your respective undergraduate institution. And for me, my eyes are directed to the overall percentage of your GPA, and kind of where you fall of other similarly situated students. Those are the meaty information that, I'm looking for more so than the undergraduate institution itself. And it's helpful because oftentimes we can get a sense of whether an institution inflate grades and also deflate grades as well to put your GPA into perspective. And so, that to me is much more important than the name itself, because I can assure you there are some institutions that I'm like, I've never heard of this school before. And so I have to look it up and, and that's totally fine.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, next question for Matthew again. What's the best and worst thing you've seen on law school applications?
Well, I've shared with you the resume aspect where I'm just like, what is going on here? Again, and this is my trauma from yesterday of just reading too many applications in a row where the resume, there was like a picture here and like just weird fonts and stuff. And it just took a little bit more time than I was hoping for to kind of get the information that I need. So that wasn't fun to try to decipher that. But even more disturbing was that everything was just sort of at a timeline, right? And so I had to kind of figure out what really belonged where. As far as other things, we all have rules in terms of requirements, and as far as our personal statement is concerned, as far as formatting, it still shocks me that students don't read those instructions and they will submit a personal statement that is overt. For us, the limit is 2 pages, right? And so when students will submit a personal statement that's 4 pages, I'm like, this really doesn't do you any favors, right? So that sometimes is shocking to me. But that's pretty much it. Nothing else stands out. You always get a personal statement that really wasn't their best foot forward, but again, I always take things with a grain of salt. Oftentimes we get applicants from, more rural backgrounds, from institutions where they don't have access to pre-law advisors. So maybe they weren't informed on how to submit a scholarship, an application to law school. And so there's a little bit of grace that's taken into this process as well. But sometimes I'm always surprised to see some of those elements in the application process.
Would any of my other colleagues maybe want to weigh in on that? What's the best thing you've seen and the worst thing you've seen on a law school application? Anybody?
I'm going to have to jump in. I told myself that I wouldn't, but I have to here. The personal statements, whether you call it a personal statement, whether you call it a statement of interest, you have got to seriously think about the information that you're communicating. And sometimes, more often than I would like to see in the process, I see some oversharing of some very graphic details involved in some pretty horrific circumstances. And so temper your statements. There is a way to discuss an experience that's had a detrimental impact on you without graphically oversharing the details of that particular situation. And I say this because I promised my admissions committee that I would, every chance I receive, talk about this particular scenario. So that's one. If you're choosing, for instance, someone's talking about wanting to go to law school, wanting to work in perhaps with the district attorney's office, working with victims of sexual assault or something like that, there's a way in which to discuss that particular manner in circumstances, situation that you may have personally experienced without being overly graphic. I'll say that. The other thing that I often see is individuals talking about being in the recovery process with mental health issues. That is something that personally is incredibly important to me, because I talked a little bit about it earlier in terms of work-life balance and having resources available to help you continue working and moving through that process. So it's important to note, it's important that you're taking those things into consideration. At some point in time, it's going to be important that the institution can facilitate and have resources available to you to assist you in that recovery process. But also give consideration to how you choose to present that issue, or if you choose to present that issue at all during the application process, because not everyone feels the same way I do, or as my colleagues on this call, and we've been on enough panels, so I know how they feel about this aspect as well. And especially if it's something that's recent in time. So always be thinking about the information you want to share, how you want to frame it and share it, and how the admissions committee, for better or worse, might react to the information that you are sharing. And that's just being 100% real about the various individuals that are serving admission panels and how that's going to impact the way they view you and the admission decisions that they're going to be making. And so that's not necessarily best or worst thing, but at risk of not being overly graphic and sharing the worst case scenarios, I won't do that with you. But I've seen some mistakes there. And you want to be cognizant of that. And that's where resources and bouncing ideas off your pre-law advisors and professionals and things of that nature come into play. For that time.
Thank you for that. Well, believe it or not, the time has come, right? For those of you who are maybe a little older, my colleagues, I'm so glad we had this time together, right? I do want to start to bring this to a close. I am very, very appreciative of our panelists' time. And so I have two questions that I'm going to allow each of you to sort of weigh in on, and then we'll have to close this session down. I ask that you stay on, even though once we're done, we just have a quick survey via a poll that we would like you to participate in. But these two questions are as follows. One, if you can give your undergraduate self one piece of advice today, what would it be? And give me a fun fact about your law school. Dean Mensah, we'll start with you.
Okay, so advice to undergrad. I would say enjoy your undergraduate experience, try new things, experiment a little bit in terms of your classes and what you think you may want to study, get involved in organizations, but with the caveat that none of that is to the detriment of your grades. In particular, if you are thinking about some postgraduate work, that cumulative GPA is going to follow you everywhere you go after undergrad, so keep that in mind. And then my fun fact, I'm sure my colleagues are tired of hearing me say this, but we're getting a new building. And that is a drawing behind me, what it's supposed to look like. We're very excited. And so our new building will be up and running and open for this coming fall 2022.
Thanks, Dean Mensah.
All right. Advice to my younger undergraduate self would be to not be afraid to ask for help. I did not take, I was nervous, I was scared, intimidated by all the law school process, law school admissions deans, law school admissions counselors. I don't know why, but I was. As you've seen, hopefully here between me and my colleagues, the admissions law world could not be more cordial and more excited to help you through this process. So please don't be afraid to reach out and utilize these resources. A fun fact about Texas Tech Law, we are right across the street from not only the United Spirits Arena where the basketball games have been happening. If anybody's following it, we're doing pretty well. But also across the street from the rec center that has its very own lazy river. So what a fun way to spend a law school afternoon.
Thank you.
I would tell my undergrad self to listen to my parents because they told me to take some classes in economics. And I was like, I will not take classes in economics. And now I wished I had. So, I kind of regret that. And what Dean Mensa said about the GPA following you. Fun fact, as we are about to host an event called Oyster Bake, which is part of Fiesta in San Antonio. And we invite about 40,000 people to campus to eat chicken on a stick and have fried oysters. And it's our largest scholarship fundraiser and it's a ton of fun.
Can other people come to that? That sounds delicious. I really like Dean Mensa's advice. I wish I had been a little bit more adventurous in things that I experimented with, because this is a very safe time to be able to do that. And so I would strongly encourage you to take some chances. Again, thinking about post-baccalaureate work, you want to, you have done well so that you can have opportunities afforded to you, but, experiment a little bit, maybe take some classes you're not comfortable taking. Fun fact, the tradition at South Texas when you graduate is there is a replica of the Liberty Bell in our atrium. And as people graduate, they ring the bell. Presumably, however many times it rings is how many times they're going to take the bar, which of course you only wanted to ring once. And they bring family and friends and mariachis and champagne and all kinds of things and celebrate with their family at the conclusion of their last and final.
Okay, what I wish I could tell my undergrad self is to not be in such a hurry. I think I was in a hurry to join certain clubs, in a hurry to take upper level classes, and then in a hurry to go to law school. And I just wish that I'd kind of what my colleagues have been saying, taken a little more time to explore things and really think through things. I didn't visit any law schools. I chose one kind of sight unseen. I didn't even really think through the law school process. So y'all are already way ahead of where I was. So as a fun fact about Baylor, the law school sits right on the banks of the Brazos River. We overlook, right across the river is our stadium. And on game days, you can sailgate. So you can take your sailboat and sail up to the stadium. So that's pretty fun.
Mine is kind of similar for what I would tell my undergrad self as my colleagues at Baylor, just not to rush things and enjoy it a little bit more. I think I was so caught up on making sure I had all these clubs and jobs and everything on my resume and didn't have time to really enjoy the undergrad experience, but do so in a way that you don't have to check yes on the character and fitness part of the application as well. And then for fun fact, we do not tailgate at SMU. It's called boulevarding. It's set up on this street called the Boulevard, and it's very fancy. There are alumni for all the different schools and that will bring in chandeliers and these grills that probably cost more than my home. So it's a lot of fun to go to as a law student too, and the law students are definitely invited.
I would tell my undergrad self, I would probably build better study skills. I mean, undergrad sometimes for some people can be easy or a cakewalk, but then that doesn't mean that your graduate degree is going to be easy and a cakewalk, or law school or whatever degree, postdoc degree that you decide to get. So build those strong study skills. Another thing is, I'm not going to be afraid to ask someone to be my mentor. A lot of times people think of mentors that they're supposed to be, oh, I want to mentor you. No, if you see someone that you feel like could provide you some guidance and some good, knowledge, especially in a particular field, reach out to them and ask if they could be a mentor of yours. And it will be up to them. But sometimes being a mentor and a mentee is a two-way street. Fun fact, just I guess two things, as a historical Black college university, we have 90% of student color at our school. Recently, our band, TSU's band, went right viral at Mardi Gras. So yeah, watch out for us on social media.
Wow. I'm somewhat shocked at well, actually, I probably shouldn't be, how similar our responses are. I kind of wrote this down and then I've been crossing through things because my very first one was slow down, but we've heard that a couple of times. Then my second one was networking, and I was just like, that's your resource, that mentor-mentee relationship. So I'm going to go to something a little bit more practical, and this really is going to strike home for me. As you can see, I'm an African-American. I was first generation college as well as law school. And something very personal for me, and it kind of goes along, I guess, with the concept of studies, or at least educating oneself, that my colleague from St. Mary's talked about, is understanding personal finance at an earlier age. That is something that I would definitely tell my younger self. Take a personal financial planning course if you are able to do so through your undergraduate institution, or perhaps just getting some great books and learning about that, because that's something that's going to be incredibly important to you. Law school is no joke. It's a major endeavor of all of your resources, your time, certainly your finances, and things of that nature. And then presumably we all want to be able to earn a living and support a family in whatever that family may consist of. I consider a single individual a family. So that's my broad expansion and definition. But thinking about things that you don't tend to think about necessarily until you get a little bit older, and then you're just like, damn, if I had started 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and then I might be in a better situation to do some things that I would love to do. So I've had a lot of conversations with individuals about financing law school, about the concept of mortgaging one's future. And that sounds a little extreme to me, but it can be a hefty price tag, but it is doable. And so while you're making decisions about your undergraduate education, assuming some debt that you should be able to service at the end of the day, have those thoughts in mind in terms of a comprehensive financial plan, or at least start building the foundation for how you think about life after all of this. And trust me, you're going to have a great work-life balance if you're not crushed by, a tremendous amount of debt, or if you're not constantly worried and focused about that because you didn't give it some thought to begin with. Fun fact, we are in the midst of developing what we're calling Aggie Land North. Most of you hopefully will know that Texas A&M University is located in College Station, Texas. The School of Law is actually located in Fort Worth, Texas. And so Aggie Land North is a new educational, professional development, public-private partnership that's going to see the erection of multiple educational complexes, with the centerpiece being the School of Law. So we're getting a new building, and we're probably getting 2 other new buildings and a parking garage to go along with it. So those are exciting times for us.
Well, I guess this is the problem of going last, is all of the advice has already been given, so I don't have much more to say other than, if I were to look back in my younger self, and it's advice that I give to the students these days, which is, everyone is on their own journey, right? You should not try to compare yourself to anyone else. So if your path is to go to law school right out of undergrad, go to law school. If your path is to take a couple of years before you decide to make this investment, take the time, because we will be here. And so that would be my advice to myself. As far as interesting fact, we are moving in with University of Houston into their new building in the fall as well. I'm kidding. We're excited for our colleagues at UH for their new building. Wish we could join. But fun fact here at the law school, this past year, it was the first time in the law school's history that we had more women than men join the incoming cohort. So it's something that we're quite proud of. And our Dean, Dean Farnsworth has been the dean here at Texas Law for the last 9 years, 9 or 10 years. And so we are in the current state, and we're in the stages of our current dean search. And so we'll have a new dean in the next coming months. So that's a fun fact for us.
Awesome. All righty. Well, I would like to thank all of the panelists for being here and ask if it's okay, if you don't mind dropping either your website and or contact information in the chat. And I will ask the panelists at the same time to just indulge me and participate in this last poll while they do that. And again, I want to thank the panelists for doing this. It's always great to see you guys, and thanks for taking the time.